G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder with Mags. Today we're going to be taking a bit of a look at the Supermarine Seafire, and in this particular fight we're going to be looking a little bit at stall fighting. Now, this video is going to be a little bit shorter than normal. Real life commitments have taken up a bit of my time and I haven't had time to sit back and do a full length commentary, so if this video is a little bit shorter than normal, I apologise for that. Now at this point the battle's been running for about 10 minutes and I've taken my time doing a very high climb all the way out to 17,000 feet, and this is because in this particular match we're versus Germany. As a general rule, always find the German pilots high, except in this particular match. As it turned out, most of them hung around 10,000 feet and engaged in low altitude fighting for most of this battle. This means that I did miss out on all of the first engagements in combat, and at this point over half the German team has already been eliminated, we've lost about half of our own, and all the fighting seems to be happening at around the 10,000 foot area, with only me and a premium Spitfire at altitude at this time. And the battle is rapidly descending below that 10,000 foot threshold, which tends to happen at the end of matches, as the longer the battle seems to go on, the closer the battle seems to get to the ground. Now I've selected my first target, it's a Focke-Wulf 190 D9, and I actually have too much altitude at this time to dive directly on him. I've had to pull back on the throttles and bleed altitude in order to be able to get down. If I tried to dive directly, I would have ripped my own wings off. Now the D9 just went head to head with an F-82. I've heard some American pilots claim that an F-82 with a gun pod is unbeatable in a head-on. The D9 begs to differ as he takes the F-82 out, although he does take some damage himself and he is smoking. He does appear to be continuing to fly without too much of an issue, however. What he doesn't appear to be doing is looking over his shoulder, and as the premium Spitfire goes for altitude, the D9 moves through to follow. I take the lead and get a nice solid critical hit. Now it's critical damage to the tail. He is in a high angle dive at the moment. That may be enough to kill him, although I'm not entirely sure. Under normal circumstances I would follow him down to finish him off, but there are two 109s coming up from the rear. So I'm holding a 35 to 40 degree climb at the moment. On WEP I'm trying to use as much of my dive speed as well as the power of my engine to pull back to altitude, and I'm keeping a track on these two 109s to my rear. Now one has disappeared, I suspect it's diving down to intercept the player that is below me. The second one is attempting to come in my direction. Now that 109 was both slower and lower than I was when I started pulling out of that dive. That means it was at a lower energy state. At this point that 109 has been trying to follow me to altitude, and in the process he has been bleeding energy while I haven't been. I've been retaining it the whole time. This has put him in a near stall, allows me to tip the plane over vertically, dive directly on top of him. Now it's a 109G, so I'd say it's a G10 or a G14. He seems to recognise he's in trouble and he's attempting to spiral the aircraft, forcing me to rip my wings. I've pulled the throttles back to zero to prevent that. Take a burst on the way through and then boom smoothly out the other side. Throttles back to maximum, retake altitude. Now he's tipped the plane over to try and fall onto my tail and get a couple of shots on me, but once again, doing so from a lower energy state, he is bleeding energy for a second time. Invert the aircraft and re-dive directly on top of him. Now at this point we're already down to 6,200 feet, and at the apex of my turn I was still doing 350 kilometers an hour, so I throttled back to 75 and held it through the roll, only hitting WEP to accelerate after I'd safely gotten my nose up. I didn't want to compression lock and lose too much altitude on this guy. And at this point the 109 started to aggressively throw itself around. He's trying to generate an overshoot. I'm making heavy use of the throttle to prevent that as he dove down, take the plane into the vertical, roll over, back into a dive, head on passing the vertical, he clips me for no damage, I do the same in return, back into the vertical, and it's at this point that the stall fight starts. Now the G14 is one of the most manoeuvrable of the high BR 109s in War Thunder, however it's still no Spitfire. Personally, I wouldn't engage in a battle like this at this low an altitude. The Spitfire does have all the advantages, and as you can see here, just using my throttle I was able to pull myself out, slip straight in on his tail as he goes to dive away, tip the plane back over, still holding zero throttle, pull in on his 6, put shots straight through. Increase throttle to 33%, this is just to give me enough engine power to keep my nose off the ground, pull in on his 6, again another burst. He's still trying to roll and force an overshoot. I'm back up to 100% now to keep my airspeed up, but I'm having no problem staying on his tail. Another good clip, he banks back over again. And this time you can see he's stalling heavily, he's having trouble keeping the plane in the air. Now I'm not far off my stall speed as well, but my stall speed is lower than the 109 G14s. So all I've got to do is hold position, eventually he goes through, get another hit on him. He tries to take it into the air again, and this was the moment that he killed himself, stalling the plane over hard, back into a dive, and I full him full of holes. Immediately back onto WEP to start getting my airspeed back up as I'm down below 200 kilometers an hour. I've got to level out and get my speed moving. Now that premium Spitfire has been engaging the second 109, and at this point I did see the red marker, but I thought he had taken him out since he was pulling so close over the area. And a second kill marker comes in. It looks like the D9 that I hit earlier on didn't make it home. And it was at this point that I turned the camera back and realised that the G10 that was there before was pulling up right behind me. Now, at the moment he has no kills and no points, so I don't think he was out of ammo. I think he was actually trying to slot in on my tail, attempting to ram me. A quick roll and a flat horizontal turn breaks me out of trouble there, and it does look like the G10 is trying to slot in behind me, and it does appear to be at a very similar energy state to what I am. Now, the premium Spitfire that was engaging just a second ago went vertical, and I don't actually see it for the rest of this fight. Now the G10's gone into a wide turn to get onto my 6, I've immediately throttled back and deployed flaps, cut in hard. We're both moving so slowly at this point that I don't need to worry about the flaps ripping. Turn back in hard and then reverse my turn to drop in on his 6, fold the flaps up, begin to throttle up to 84%. I don't want to give it too much throttle just yet, I want to see what he's going to do with his energy. He goes into a dive directly on top of me. I pull the plane straight into the vertical, but rather than throttling up, I actually throttle back to 0 and immediately stall turn the plane over to re-dive, only throttling up once the nose is down. This puts me straight on his tail and then follow him through into a vertical climb. Now at this point he has more energy than I do, and he's going to reach the apex of his turn faster than I will. However, watching him carefully, throttle back to 0 in order to lower my apex and re-dive back on his tail again. Now each time I do this, I'm forcing the 109 closer to the ground. Every single time it wants to do a stall turn to re-dive on my location, it's going to require more altitude for him to be able to pull out of it. And this constant dropping of energy allows me to get my guns on target before he can get out of the way. Now the hit was solid, but the damage was superficial. However, this was enough to let him know that I am now taking the advantage in the fight. He pulls into the vertical, throttle up to wet, pull into the vertical. As he loops over trying to avoid me, he takes it into a dive. However, at this point we have gotten so low to the ground, he's struggling to pull out of it. He scrapes the treetops at this point, trying to pull over again, and I've easily managed to roll the plane over to pull back on his 6. Again, he tries to tip the plane past me, but at this speed, the Spitfire just has all the advantages, and he surrendered them all to me in the fight. Tries to loop it over again, and this time wasn't able to pull it out of the dive and smacks it into the ground. So, 3 kills for this match, and a fun little example of stall fighting. Hope you enjoyed the video. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.